fact, if you go to Google and just look for trends and then type in inflation, right? So you can see the increase in search activity where people are typing in inflation and then searching that as a search term. Look at that. What we have right now is the highest going back to 2004. And the reason it's 2004 is that's as far as the data goes when you do the Google search. I don't know, what they're doing with the data from prior to 2004, but this is the highest since 2004. And if you look at this huge surge, we are right now at 100. Prior to that, the next highest level of inflation surges was actually in 2004. We had a spike up to 75, and then it came back down. In fact, if you look all the way from 2004 until the end of 2020, pretty much all the searches were pretty consistent at about 50. And now in the beginning of 2021 is where we shot up from 50 all the way up to 100. So something changed in 2021 that resulted in all these people all over the United States deciding independently that they were going to search inflation. Why are they doing that? Well, because they're worried about it. I mean, if it was transitory, would they care? No, they don't. They care because it doesn't seem like it's transitory. So the Federal Reserve is ignoring all the signs that inflation is here to stay and instead pretending that it's transitory. Well, we can't just pretend and play make-believe and hope the problem goes away, because they tried that with the mortgage problem, even though it was obvious that subprime was the tip of a huge iceberg. The Fed kept saying, don't worry, it's contained, because they were hoping that if they denied the problem, maybe it would go away. Well, they're doing the same thing again with inflation. They're telling all the people who are so worried about inflation, hey, don't worry about it because it's just transitory. Well, it's as transitory as subprime was contained. In fact, what's helping to drive all of this inflation is the Fed monetizing all of these government deficits. They just released the numbers for the first 7 months of this fiscal year. And during this time period, the U.S. government collected about $2.1 trillion in taxes, yet spent $4.1 trillion, which means $2 trillion was borrowed and basically funded by the Federal Reserve. And these are the official numbers. The unofficial numbers are even worse. But what's really important here is if you compare the first 7 months of this fiscal year to the first 7 months of the previous fiscal year, the deficit now is much larger than it was then, except back then we were deep in the COVID recession. That period included the complete meltdown of the economy. Yet the government is spending even more money and running even bigger deficits now when the economy is supposedly in recovery than it was when it was still in recession, which again proves that there isn't a recovery at all. It's phony. The only reason the economy looks like it's recovering is because the Fed is printing all this money to artificially stimulate it. But the way you see the truth is to look at the increase in prices that the Fed is still denying exists. They don't want to acknowledge that inflation is not transitory, because then they have to acknowledge that it's the recovery that's transitory, because it doesn't actually exist and inflation is going to kill it. And when the next recession is caused by inflation, there is no way that the Fed can use inflation to cure a recession that's caused by inflation. I mean, the hair of the dog that bit you isn't going to work. It's just going to make the economy sicker.
The Peter Schiff Show.